everyone. My name is Emily Huo, and I run small business sales for Twitter Southeast Asia. In the spirit of talking about Twitter, feel free to tweet about my talk or anything you're seeing this week with the hashtag #TechInAsia. You can also send me a message. My handle is @mhuo if you have any comments or questions related to this talk. I promise you it's not just a ploy for me to gain more followers, although that's always nice. But I'm a huge fan of the platform. I was a huge fan of it long before I became an employee of it, so I'm always happy to take the conversation there. It shouldn't be a surprise to anyone that internet usage has grown tremendously. In particular, internet usage via smartphones have grown significantly over the last 5 years. From 2010 to 2013, mobile growth has nearly reached 500%. So that really represents an opportunity for more content. If you know a little bit about Twitter's history, you know that Twitter actually started out as an SMS platform. So really, inherently, Twitter was built for the mobile experience. Having the right content distributed at scale is now more important than ever. Every 2 days, there are 1 billion tweets sent, and there are 2.4 billion global internet users. Just for some Twitter trivia, does anyone actually know when Twitter first launched, how long it took for Twitter to go from its first tweet ever to the first billionth tweet? I can't actually see anyone because the lights are a little bit too bright, but well, it actually took Twitter 3 years, 2 months, 1 day to go from the first tweet ever to its billionth tweet. And now we do this every 2 days. So it's a little bit of a reminder of just how large Twitter has become in such a short amount of time. But there are challenges. If you ask any marketer, they'll say, 54% of them will say they have difficulty in creating interesting content. And then half of them will also say that there's challenge in creating content consistently. So today I'm going to go over what makes a good tweet, review the content strategy that you as a startup should be having on Twitter, go over what the term, don't post and pray mean. It's a personal favorite of mine, and I'll explain a little bit as to what that actually means. And then some key takeaways. So what makes a good tweet? Twitter has a character limitation of 140 characters. But I actually recommend if you are a business owner or you're tweeting on behalf of your startup, to keep the tweet length even shorter than that. So something around 100 characters or less, maybe 100 to 110, because you really, really want to have a simple message to your user. Your tweet should also include one call to action, so telling the user why there's value in engaging with this tweet. Don't be afraid to actually tell the user what to do with this tweet. You can say, retweet this tweet, and then your tweet copy message. Going back to the old saying, a picture is worth 1,000 words, it's certainly true about Twitter. Obviously, you want to make sure that picture is not distracting and has a really strong point of focus, and you want to make sure it also has the optimal aspect ratio to 1. But most importantly, I would say make sure that your pictures, whatever you're posting on your tweet, is actually related to the tweet copy. Another thing you can actually add to your tweet is a video. So you can now upload and distribute directly onto Twitter. We allow a maximum length of 10 minutes, but as a startup, I actually recommend you having a video much shorter than that, something 3 minutes at most, if not under. Mostly because people don't want to be sitting through a 10-minute video unless your content is very, very engaging. And then the last rich media experience we have is Vine. So Vine is part of the Twitter platform, and what it is, it's a 6-second shared loop video that you can put on with your tweets. And sometimes this intimidates businesses a lot because they feel like they have to be super creative and artistic to create one of these. My recommendation is actually not, meaning think of something that's really boring, that might be really boring to you. It could be really interesting to someone else. I'll take an example of a fashion student. So a fashion student is sketching, sewing, and putting together garments day in and day out. And as a person who could barely draw like a stick figure to save my life, like I would love to actually see a 6-second loop of that experience of what a fashion student goes through. So now I'm going to talk a little bit about the content strategy on Twitter. And there are some key questions you should be asking about your startup before you even start tweeting. And then you should be thinking about it in a content planning framework. Then I'll go over some 10 rules of great content. The first thing you want to ask when you use Twitter is, what is your identity on Twitter? Do you want to represent yourself as a corporation, a business segment, or a person as part of the company? There's no real right or wrong way of doing so. I mean, I can tell you, Zappos, which is a subsidiary of Amazon, Tony Hsieh, their CEO, has close to 3 million followers and super engaging content. On the other hand, Zappos, the company, has something around 35,000 followers. So it just really depends on your particular company and your particular brand. There are a couple of things that appear on the profile page. I'll first talk about the bio. So a bio shows up right underneath your profile picture, and you have to write it in 160 characters or less. There are a couple of good ways of doing this. I'll go over 3 main recommendations. So the first way you can go about writing a great bio is you're just explaining your product or services. So even if I knew nothing about what Grab Taxi does, if I read their description here, their bio here, I know exactly what they're doing. Another way to go about it is use the bio as an opportunity to express your brand or values. So Slack, in this case, they say they're on a mission to make the working life simpler, more pleasant, more productive. I actually have no idea what Slack does from reading this bio. However, it's engaging enough, intriguing enough for me to actually want to learn more. The third way you can go about doing this is write a bio that shows the reader what they can expect if they actually follow your accounts. So at Discover Hong Kong's case, which is the Hong Kong Tourism Board, you know exactly if you follow that account, you're getting updates about the city of Hong Kong. You can also share your photos using the hashtag Discover Hong Kong. Another thing that appears on your profile is the header image. And don't forget that this exists, because a lot of times I see companies always forget to upload one of these. And think about it as a way to express your brand, your startup once again. So there are a couple of good ways you can go about this. The first, use this header image as a way to display your brand personality. If you look at Carousel's case, their header picture is just a simple black and white picture of a vintage camera. Another way you can go about doing this is showcasing your product or service through the header image. So Redmart shows a stock image of the goods that they deliver. Very simple. And then lastly, you can use the header image to inspire your followers. So Room to Read, which is a nonprofit that promotes literacy, is showing a picture of children with books. And then you have to ask yourself, what are hashtags used for? So it's a little bit different between how users use it and how companies use it. On the user side, people use hashtag to discover content, make human connection, self-expression. For companies, however, you really got to think about it in the context of using it for your brand, your product, a campaign initiative you have, and maybe even a seasonal moment. And then you have to ask yourself who your audience is. I think it's pretty obvious that your audience is obviously someone you're trying to convince to use by your product or service. But don't forget about the fact that you have influencers and brand advocates. So influencers are people who are experts in your field and can influence others to buy your good or service. And then brand advocates, these are people who might not necessarily have a huge following, but are constantly spreading good word of mouth for you. So you want to give each of these segments a character description. Really understand the motivations. So then you can start aligning these motivations to interests and plan your content around these interests. And I'll give you an example of how you can put all of this together. So let's say you are in the smartphone business, and your objective is to be the first choice smartphones among youths. Your audience are 16 to 28-year-olds, tech savvy, both genders. And their user motivations that they want to be delighted, they want to be the first to tell and share experiences, and they want to gain some more know-hows. As a result, for your startup, you might think about putting 3 main content pillars in place, meaning everything you're tweeting about is related to these 3 things. So one, you can have 40% of it be based on lifestyle, 20% based on technology, and then 40% based on photography.